This video is brought to you by Mubi, a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe. Get a whole month free at Mubi.com/Karsten. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of What I Watched This Month, July edition. I started this month with Glenn Ross. There's a case to be made that this is the most stacked cast of all time. The credits at the start just keep going, and it's just one A-list actor after another. It's kind of hilarious, and it delivers. Everybody here is bringing their A-game with the performances, specifically Ed Harris, who I think delivers his best of all time in this. It's the kind of movie where the praise really ends there. The direction isn't as boring as most acting movies you see nominated for Oscars these days, but at the same time it isn't anything exceptional. Script is good, but feels a little stuck on the page. I kind of left this being like, wait, that's it? I'd say it's worth watching to see a bunch of actors doing some capital A acting, but nothing else really stuck with me. Then I watched Runaway Brain for Monkey Mondays. I watched this mostly because it's a short movie, and I didn't have much time that Monday, but I ended up being pleasantly surprised at just how much this does for a short film. It's both got the charm of some of my favorite animated work to come out of Disney in the 90s, whilst also being more disturbing than I thought Disney was willing to go. Then I watched Maxine. Yeah. We've talked about this one enough, and you know how I feel, and I know how you feel about how I feel, but I hate to say it, nothing has really changed. In fact, the longer I've sat with it, the more comfortable I feel in calling this a pretty lukewarm and forgettable experience. I mean, I remember after Pearl, even though I wasn't crazy about it, I couldn't stop thinking about it. It was in the conversation well after its release. Maxine, I forgot came out this month. I feel a lot better about my feelings on this, especially after seeing Longlegs, which I'll elaborate on in a few minutes. If nothing else, I hope this means Ty West can start from scratch on something more exciting moving forward. Obviously, the same goes for Mia Goth. Then I watched my first and far from last Eric Rohmer film of the month, The Green Ray. I've been on the outskirts of Rohmer's filmography for years now, always feeling a bit intimidated by how French and literary it seemed. I was afraid I'd need to be in a specific mood to get into them, that I need to have a glass of wine, when in reality that's not true at all. These are incredibly cozy and light films that are both easy to get invested in while also being rich with meaning. The Green Ray is a bit of an outlier, at least from what I watched this month, being about a woman on vacation who is basically trying to find herself. There's not really a main shitty guy in this one. And as vague as that sounds, each individual scene is incredibly gripping. Each conversation is so interesting, even if it's about the most mundane things like vegetarianism. It makes these conversations just so profound and fascinating. It vividly reminded me of my own solo travels and what it feels like to wait for that special moment in your life to show up, but it never does. His filmmaking appears effortless when in actuality there's like a dozen pieces to dissect and analyze in every scene. There's more to say on him later. I watched many more of his films this month, but let's just say it's Rohmer summer. Then I watched Light Sleeper. This is a 90s Paul Schrader film starring Willem Dafoe, and it wasn't as much of a home run as I wanted it to be. If this was the first Paul Schrader film I had ever seen, I'd actually struggle to see what's so special about him. I mean, this does have a pretty rich New York atmosphere about it. I like how grimy it feels. Willem Dafoe delivers what may be the most grounded performance I've ever seen from him, and it just proves he's one of the best actors we've ever had. But other than all that, this did feel surprisingly normal and tame for Schrader, a perfectly watchable time. Then I watched Out of Sight. This is an early Clooney and J-Lo film directed by Soderbergh that I'm surprised I don't hear more about. I mean, the thing about these Soderbergh movies is it's clear he knows how to make a good crime film and how to add some color to it. The color in this case being some really well-executed eroticism. But what always fails to push me over the edge with one of his movies is the lackluster character development. He knows how to write a group of really fun characters, but I rarely feel moved emotionally by a Soderbergh project. And this one kind of worked. It starts out cut and dry, don't get me wrong, but in the back half, Clooney's character really becomes a pretty fascinating guy. There's more self-reflection going on than I'm used to for Soderbergh, and it made the whole thing just that much more charming. There's some fat in this that you could definitely cut. That goes for most Soderbergh films in my experience, but this was a really good time. Then I watched Point Blank. Holy shit! Don't let its pretty generic title fool you. This is an incredibly stylized and at times psychedelic crime thriller about a man seeking revenge, and I loved the shit out of it. Led by a stone cold but always compelling lead performance from Lee Marvin, this thing hits the ground running and doesn't really let up. Between this and Deliverance, I'm realizing I'm a pretty big John Boorman fan. He's really good at creating murky atmospheres that are so easy to get lost in, and weirdly, this and Playtime share a lot of similarities, being about a man man navigating a world that outgrew him. It's what sets this apart from being just a psychedelic crime revenge film. Really loved this, if you can't tell. A film that totally captures just how transcending cinema can be. Boy, is it a good one. Then I watched Monkey Kingdom for Monkey Mondays. This is for kids. This is a movie for classrooms. This is the one that got me to almost quit Monkey Mondays. What am I doing with my life? Then I rewatched Mulholland Drive. I have to say, third time's a charm. As if I needed more reasons to love this. It really says a lot that this is my third time seeing this, yet I'm still picking up on new details in every scene, and it still hits me just as hard emotionally. Actually, probably hit me the hardest this time. This and Fire Walk With Me are in a constant battle in my head for most devastating film ending ever. Goddamn, when he goes dark, he goes really, really dark. There is some magic to the cut of this too. This does not feel like a 2-hour and 30-minute film. Maybe because every single scene is iconic in its own way. As I was watching, I kept waiting for it to slow down, but once one incredible scene ends, another classic begins. It's a front-to-back masterpiece. It may be the best David Lynch movie. Then I watched Longlegs. Already talked about this one in its own video, but I enjoyed this quite a bit. I only just recently started to think of it as a borderline satire on elevated horror and how it pokes fun at the self-seriousness of the horror genre these days in a way that was, at times, pretty funny. Like that shot of Nick Cage screaming, just paused in the background behind the detective. That's such a good bit. I mean, yeah, I can see it being a bit style over substance for some, but like I said in my video, the style here is really good. It looks just incredible to me, and when it's that good, I can let the style over substance thing slide. To put it pretty simply, I just had too much fun watching this to call it a bad movie. Then I watched A Summer's Tale. Now this feels like a proper Romer movie. This basically walked so passages could run, and you guys know how much I loved passages. Any film that can make you feel for a real piece of shit is a feat in my book. No matter how irritating the decisions are in this film, it's clear Romer loves all of his characters equally and is focused more on understanding why they do what they do rather than giving you any sort of secondhand satisfaction at their failures. It makes for a much more interesting film, a much pricklier film. The fact that a scene of just two characters on a walk feels scandalous and spicy is crazy, and he accomplishes that in like the first 20 minutes. Really enjoyed this. Been thinking about it all month. Then I watched The Mighty Peking Man for Monkey Mondays. After Monkey Kingdom, I needed to bounce back with Monkey Mondays and watch something kind of crazy, something for adults. This certainly delivered in that regard. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, Peking Man is a vulgar and extremely campy take on King Kong, and I had a good time with it. Inevitable misogyny aside, for being so stupid and silly, it never once felt like a waste of time. The opening scene alone is reason enough for you to tune in and give this your full attention. Then I watched Platoon. Incredibly embarrassing thing to admit, but this is my first Oliver Stone film. Yeah, it's pretty pathetic, but I liked it. I mean, I don't know his filmography well at all, clearly, but I feel like this was a good entry point. It's on the surface a pretty standard Vietnam War film, but once you sink your teeth into it, it's a pretty dark one. Never as dark as other war films like Full Metal Jacket or Apocalypse Now, obviously, but dark in a more stripped down way. This one feels specifically focused on the group of characters, and I liked that about it. I wish I had more to say about this, but that's kind of all I got. Glad I finally saw one of the essential Defoe performances. Charlie Sheen getting the job done. Yeah, really looking forward to watching more Oliver Stone movies. Then I watched Twister. This is one of those movies I had at 1.5 stars on Letterboxd years ago, and I don't know why. I don't know why I do most things over there. But anyway, I thought I'd have a complete change of heart this time around, but I'm still not as crazy about this as I want to be. It's good summer popcorn fun with an actually traumatizing opening scene. Helen Hunt is good, but Bill Paxton is so dry. I just could not care less about him. To make the film not feel so repetitive, the central romance has to be more compelling or a little fun, and I just simply couldn't get into it here. Then I watched The Bakery Girl of Monceau. This is an Eric Romer short film and the first in his 6 Moral Tales series, and it was a good time. A little generic compared to what I'm used to from him. The characters here feel very wooden compared to how real they feel in what I've seen, but it's still somehow incredibly charming, even if it's some of the most blatant littering I've ever seen on display in film. Then I watched Conor O'Malley's new short film, Corey's. This is incredible. I have nothing to say about it. Anything I could say is just not going to do it justice. Go watch it. Go watch this. And I watched Claire's Knee. This is my last Romare film of the month, I promise. And honestly, of everything I saw, this might be the weakest. If you thought Summer's Tale was prickly, boy is this a toughie, as it centers on a guy who only has romantic interests in younger girls. But what I said earlier still applies to this one. Even if you're following the most insufferable, kind of creepy guy the entire time, the film does make an effort to understand his character, as well as Laura, who I found even more fascinating. I wish the film followed her instead. I don't think it's this guy that makes this bad. I think it actually makes the film more interesting. I think it's the fact that compared to other Romare films, this one felt a little too wordy for my taste. I also didn't think Aurora Cornu was great at all. She was a very awkward character in a film that did not need any more of that. Then I watched The Wizard of Oz for Monkey Mondays. Man, it really is that good, isn't it? It is unfortunate that one of the earliest examples of color on film happens to be one of the best. Like, who knew it would all be downhill from here? I mean, I just watched the Wicked trailer in theaters. Yikes. Anyway, it's crazy how timeless this movie is. It will still hit just as hard 50 years from now. I weirdly have more to say about this when talking about Babe, so I'll hold off for then. Then I watched Mysterious Object at Noon. This is only the second film from Apichatpong Weerasethakul that I've seen, and it's actually his first feature film, apparently. Goddamn, did it make me realize I have to dive into his filmography. While only his first feature, there is a tremendous sense of confidence in this film. It's still unlike anything I've ever seen. So many elements here that I saw in his latest film, Memoria, which is really cool to see how far back some of his signature traits go, like all the carefully placed supernatural aspects, the really dry but well executed humor. I really enjoyed this. I recommend checking it out. Then I watched The Hidden Fortress. I can't believe I slept on this for as long as I did, always assuming this was passable Kurosawa. And in some ways, sure, it isn't nearly as complex or as dark as a lot of his masterpieces, but I still think this is one of the most entertaining adventure films ever made. The first half may be a tad disturbing at times, but for the most part, I would say this is one of Kurosawa's most family-friendly movies. This would have me absolutely hooked as a young boy, just undeniably gripping filmmaking. And all of that is to say, if you're watching this and have never seen a Kurosawa movie before, this is a very good place to start, as it's a somewhat light-hearted and basic example of what makes him one of the best to ever do it. Then I watched Twisters. There's a lot to say about this silly popcorn summer action flick, which makes me very happy. I don't think Twisters is on par with something like Top Gun Maverick, despite feeling tonally similar in a weird way, probably because Joseph Krasinski is credited for the story for some reason, and also probably because of the Glenn Powell of it all, but it does feel like it belongs in the same camp as something like Maverick. It's not amazing, but next to everything else we've been getting, this seems so comfortable with what it is. In a way, a shocking amount of blockbusters that come out today aren't. Just to list off a few things I love about this, Lee Isaac Chung, despite being leagues better on Minari, is still able to pay a lot of attention towards the locations here, a pleasant surprise considering most blockbusters don't give a single shit about where they take place. Glenn Powell lights up the screen. I don't think anyone needs to tell you he's charming at this point. You get it. The CGI is never noticeable. It looks way better than I was expecting it to look. It's a goofy movie. The final disaster scene is just a total blast. Where it falls short is in the script, which feels confused about which tone it should lean into. Is it silly popcorn ridiculousness, or is it a sincere drama? The film can't really figure it out or make the blend work, and as a result, Daisy Edgar-Jones, who is at the center of the film, also never seemed to land the right tone. I don't think she's a bad actor, or that she lacks charm. Anyone next to Glenn is gonna come off stiff. I just think she was given an unnecessarily heavy role that A, she couldn't entirely carry, and B, the movie didn't entirely need. But I liked this. At the end of the day, the chemistry between her and Powell is a million times more enjoyable than the original film. Good time. Then I watched The Duel. I was invited to the world premiere for this in Indianapolis, which was very cool. Thank you to the filmmakers for the invite. I had a really good time. As for the movie, it was also pretty fun. I'll keep it real, I haven't been keeping up with the filmography of Dylan Sprouse. Gotta be honest. And with former child stars, you kind of go in expecting the worst, but in this case, I think he still has really great comedic delivery, even if he's a tad underused here. In general, I think what really holds this back is how underbaked the central duel is. The two leads feel stuck on the surface, and the film doesn't really know how to go any deeper or add a much needed sense of nuance to their dynamic. It kind of spins its wheels a bit. It spends more time on side characters and goofs, which can be fun, but doesn't allow for some of the film's more emotional moments near the end to really land. And I finished the month with a Monkey Mondays movie Babe Pig in the City. The Monkey Mondays movie before this was Wizard of Oz, which this coincidentally references in the poster, and in my opinion, in its approach too. As mentioned in the Oz review, it's hard not to look at that film and think it's all been downhill since. But Babe Pig in the City does give me slight hope that things haven't entirely gone to shit. The same way Oz made full use of the new technology to create something completely breathtaking and magical, Babe does the same with the technology of its time. This took me back to what it felt like to watch something as a kid. Everything is so magical and surprising and fun and funny. I mean, it's a bit of a curse going to film school, specifically in post-production, and learning how so many things are made. It takes away some of the magic of watching movies. But with something like this, I was completely taken aback by how they pulled off most of these shots, especially for the time. It looks amazing. It just proves kind of what I was saying about Furiosa, that nobody is like George Miller the way he experiments with new technology and pushes the medium forward. This is a great example at why he's such an adventurous filmmaker. I can't believe I'm saying this. I think it's one of George Miller's best. And hey, that's what I watched this month. What did you watch? Can you please let me know? And as always, thanks for watching. Go watch these films and form your own opinions. And if you're looking for something to watch next month, boy, do I have the recommendation for you. You should check out this week's sponsor, Mubi. Mubi is a curated streaming service dedicated to elevating great cinema from all around the globe. From iconic directors to emerging auteurs, there's always something new to discover. With Mubi, each and every film is hand-selected by its team of curators. Discover the best of cinema at your fingertips, streaming anytime, anywhere. Mubi also has a wonderful magazine called Notebook. Notebook is a print-only magazine devoted to the art and the culture of cinema. Created, prepared, and published by Mubi. Notebook is published bi-annually. A yearly subscription includes 2 beautiful issues, and with each issue you get an exclusive gift, a little surprise just for Notebook subscribers. You guys know me, I love little gifts. And shipping is free wherever you are. Issue number 5 is specifically pretty cool because the front and back covers are designed by John Wilson of How To with John Wilson, who is one of my favorite people out there. Also, they smell so good. They smell like it smells amazing. You can subscribe to the magazine now for $40 a year. Find out more at Mubi.com/magazine. And as always, you can try Mubi free for 30 days at Mubi.com/Karsten. That's MUBI.com/Karsten for a whole month of great cinema for free.